All right, hello travelers. Welcome back to Show and Tell with Reach the World. For over 20 years, Reach the World has used virtual exchange to inspire youth to become curious, confident global citizens. My name is Tim, and as part of Reach the World's efforts to support educators and families during the COVID-19 epidemic, we'll be sharing free live stream show and tell events with fascinating members of our global community. We hope you'll join us for this virtual journey. You can find an updated calendar of live stream events and much more at athome.reachtheworld.org. For today's show and tell, I'm excited to welcome Benjamin A. Gilman International Scholarship recipient Quinn Carolyn. Quinn worked abroad in 2 different U.S. embassies, and this past fall he shared his experiences in Ukraine through a Reach the World virtual exchange with a 3rd grade class in Illinois. Now he's back from the Republic of Georgia to tell us all about what it's like to work in a U.S. embassy. Please be sure to let us know you're here and share any questions for Quinn using the YouTube chat bar. We'll get to as many questions as we can. And that said, welcome Quinn. What would you like to show us today?
Hey Tim, thank you for the introduction, and thank you everybody, and hi to Miss Ponzio's class that I shared with last semester. I'd like to share, like you mentioned, my U.S. Embassy internship experiences in Kiev, Ukraine, and Tbilisi, Georgia, for anyone interested in diplomacy, politics, world cultures, and languages like I was when I was younger, and give you insight about how that works and kind of pull back the curtain on, how to get an embassy internship, what they're all about, and some of the cool stuff you can do while you're at an embassy as an intern. So starting with that, I'm just going to share my screen really quick so you guys can see this nifty little slide that I made. All right, really quick. So, Reach the World. My first week in Kiev, Ukraine, it was kind of baffling to me. 6 months prior, I had applied on usajobs.gov, where a lot of these internships come up every 2 to 4 months. Because embassy internships and internships in DC with the State Department, they open for the summer, for the fall, and for the spring. So I was lucky enough to do one for each season this year, at least for fall and for spring. And when I got the news about 2 months after I applied that, hey, we'd like you to be a U.S. Embassy intern in Kiev, Ukraine, I was ecstatic. I had applied 3 years in a row and never got it. And this time I did. And so I was like, okay, what's next? Like, do I go now? Do I go like in a month? What happens? And they're like, calm down. It'll be okay. You need to follow these processes, give us some medical forms, fill out a little bit of paperwork, talk to your school, figure out what you need for credit and all that, and then get a security clearance. Now, the security clearance is the most ambiguous one. You watch shows like Burn Notice or James Bond, and you're like, oh, what does that mean? Like, is it going to be like some interrogation? No, it's a lot of, paperwork. It's a lot of just talking about yourself. And, it just takes a while because they want to make sure you're okay. And so that took 2 months, and I was like, all right, what's going to happen next? They got the security clearance, and then they're like, all right, well, you can come within 2 weeks. So that was the more stressful part. Once I got the security clearance, I had about 2 weeks to get tickets, plan my housing, figure out my route to the embassy, and weirdly enough, a SIM card, which was really stressful. But I got my phone, my flights, and my home figured out. And my first week, you see on this first slide, I had the amazing opportunity to get to Ukraine the week before Halloween. So when I came to the embassy, it was a crazy experience, my second day of being in Ukraine, to be at the embassy. But it was also weird to see the embassy decorated for Halloween. I would always expect that embassies were these very professional, very like to the business places, but they're like a lot of workplaces. The people are very nice, and they decorate for holidays, and they celebrate events that are going on, both in Ukrainian culture, holidays happening there, and also US holidays. So I get there and there's jack-o'-lanterns all around, and I'm meeting everyone in my office, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to be doing the next 2.5 months? And the first thing my boss asked me was, hey, do you want to do the public diplomacy event at America House with some of the other local interns? I was like, what does that mean? He's like, oh, well, like you'll just be doing like a game show, like posting on Instagram, and Facebook Live about like the America House haunted house and just talk to a few local interns about it. And I was like, okay, sure. I'm down. Like, that sounds like an amazing experience. Not what I was expecting at first, but when I went to America House, I had the opportunity to meet so many cool local interns my age, and then also meet so many people interested in American culture and Halloween and all these other things, which ended up being the best part of my internship. I was a political economic intern with the embassy, so I worked on political stuff and all that. But these events, doing face-to-face diplomacy and getting to know Ukrainians my age and older and younger than me, really made it a warming experience and also a very insightful one. Because with embassy internships, you can kind of be alone. Like sometimes there's 1, 2, maybe 3 other interns that are Americans. So that's a safety net. But in my case, I was the only American intern in the whole embassy until the very end. So getting to know these local interns and getting to volunteer in so many different ways that I'll talk about going forward really made it such a wonderful experience. On the left is my last America House event that we did with USAID to talk about, just getting active in elections and getting to know certain words and all this sort of stuff. And that was a really cool event as well. But going forward, after that Halloween event, I kind of became like a go-to guy for some of the outreach, especially because I was the only intern. So whenever they had an English club event, like the one you see here at Shevchenko University in Kiev, they'd send me out, which was great because it got me out of the office. I loved the embassy and I loved, working in my desk, but of course, any chance to get outside and see the sunshine when it's a sunny day in Kiev is a gift you better well take. So I go out and do this, and it's very similar to America House. The English clubs in Kiev at Shevchenko University or the language institutes really love to get, a U.S. student perspective and find out ways to study in the U.S. or just get better English skills and practice when they can with an English speaker. So it really brightens up your day to do those types of things. And here's my favorite thing. Me and Tim were talking about this before. This is my trip to Chernobyl, Ukraine. I don't know if some of you have seen the recent HBO TV show or if you've seen any of the other, documentaries or History Channel stuff about Chernobyl, but it was the center of a nuclear reactor disaster in the 1980s. And it's been portrayed in numerous films and documentaries, as I mentioned. And it's a very interesting site for Europe as a whole, and especially for Ukraine. So during my time there, I knew I wanted to do one thing, and that was definitely see Chernobyl on my own. Unfortunately, the embassy couldn't figure out a way to do it through them, but I did it through a private company that had done it for years, ever since the site around Chernobyl had been cleared and cleaned. And I went there with my girlfriend, Mac, on her trip there. And it was, as she put it, not the most romantic trip someone could go on, but it was definitely interesting. The view on the left is of the Pripyat Ferris wheel. It was never used. It was actually for a Soviet holiday event that was supposed to take place a week after the Chernobyl explosion. And so it was never used. It's been there untouched for decades. And the view on the right is from the top of an abandoned apartment building in Pripyat that we got to see the whole view of. And if you look very far out, you can see the dome over the old Chernobyl reactor, which now covers the nuclear radiation and everything else stemming from the old explosion zone. So that was a phenomenal experience. And it definitely brightened everything up. And probably was my highlight for all of my internship personally for Kiev, Ukraine. And moving on from there, you have my time in, Tbilisi, Georgia, the embassy there. That got cut short, like a lot of the, study abroad and reach the world programs we had planned for this semester due to COVID. But I still had a good month, and the people there were amazing. there were a lot of local interns that were also my age, so they were a great resource, but there were also a few American interns and foreign service officers that really took the time to talk to me and hang out even on the weekends, which is really fun, and really make it a lively community. Always having events and other things to go to, which is another great part about embassies, because again, they seem like these imposing, structures, and this is where the diplomacy happens, and this is where diplomats meet and ambassadors talk. But on a day-to-day basis, it's really a community and a family in a lot of embassies. People know each other, very well because they see each other day in and day out. Their kids play with one another. They go to the same clubs or take the same classes together. So when you get there as an intern, as the newbie who's only going to be there for like pretty much a blink of an eye, they really make sure it's a fun experience, and they tell you what you should be looking for when you get out of this experience. So what things will make your internship even better. So this is my part of my team. This is when we took a fun trip to the Caucus Mountains, and that is the Caucus Mountains, which was very exciting for me because I'm a mountain junkie. I really love snowboarding and hiking and all that sort of stuff. So getting to put on a pair of sweatpants, a raincoat, and rent a snowboard and go down, I didn't anticipate snowboarding while I was there, was great. And the fact I got to do it with some people from my office was even more fun because it was like team building. And after that, it really felt like fun to go to work and talk about this little trip and when are we going to go out next. So yeah.
Fantastic. Wow. Quinn, lots of questions coming in based on what you said. There's so many aspects of what you've done, both in Ukraine and Georgia, that I think a lot of people find really interesting. One of the questions that we got through YouTube was, what were some of the Ukrainian holidays, or was there a Ukrainian holiday that you celebrated? You talked about Halloween and the embassies sort of keeping alive of Halloween in a different country. What's something that's specific to Ukraine that you enjoyed?
Well, unfortunately, while I was there, I didn't get to enjoy any Ukrainian holidays. I was really looking forward this time to be able to spend time in Ukraine during Orthodox Christmas, because I never had that opportunity to witness an Orthodox Christmas. But I did get to enjoy a lot of things culturally unique to Ukraine, such as I went to a pisanka fair, which is, a small decorated egg fair. I got to, what was one of the other things? I went to the opera once and saw, I forget the Ukrainian play, but I saw that with my girlfriend. That was really fun. And I also picked up on a Friday tradition in the embassy is to wear traditional Ukrainian shirts. They're white, embroidered with red patterns. I never got to buy one of the shirts, but I did really enjoy seeing the people come in. Some people would play traditional instruments on Fridays in the cafeteria, and that was always an interesting experience.
Wow, that sort of leads me right into the next question, which was, you as an embassy, you're representing Americans' interests and American culture abroad. What are some of the unique ways that an embassy sort of gives you insight into the host country's culture as well? Sounds like there's a lot of interaction.
Oh, there's tons of interaction. I mean, based on Kiev especially, I did a lot of outreach with them. So a lot of the stuff is, English language clubs or technical training. If kids are interested, for example, in like, computers and that sort of stuff, sometimes we do that type of outreach. But also as an intern, I got language training in Kiev. So I've been studying Russian and like Ukrainian for a while. And when I was there, my boss organized Russian language classes, and it was with a Ukrainian tutor, and she would always give me little proverbs of Ukrainian phrases I should throw out there in conversation that would make things go smoother, and also just, make it more fun to interact with the local population. And then in Tbilisi, we joke all the time. They give you a little, packet of words and phrases to use and things you should keep in mind. But then, like, speaking to the local interns and picking up on little slang here and there as far as language is concerned really helped when you went out for meetings with local, leaders or anyone of that type. So.
All right. Very cool. What a unique sort of study and work abroad experience. Well, student Dana is asking how long the Ferris wheel at Chernobyl has been where it is.
I'd say it was erected the same year as the explosion. So that was about 86, I think. So it's been about, 3 decades or so.
All right. Yeah, been there for a while and as Quinn said, never used, right?
Yeah, never used. So,
Mm.
And they really don't like people trying to use it now. So if you ever go, don't try to be the first.
Right.
But
can you say something in Ukrainian?
Miss Ponzio might be ashamed of me.
Sorry to put you on the spot here.
I know. I was thinking about this earlier today because I thought this question would come up. One big difference I found, my tutor taught me, between Ukrainian and Russian is good day. So, for example, in Russian, you say Dobry dien, and that dien is because of a little accent they have in Russian language. But in Ukrainian, it's more suitable to say, at least this is what I was told, Dobry din. So you don't have that little accent at the end. Another thing I know is thank you. And if any of my Ukrainian friends are watching, forgive me if I pronounce it poorly, but dziękuję. So that's like thank you. I'd say that almost every day, trying to order in Ukrainian in the cafeteria. And so I'm really
that's a good one to know.
Yeah.
So you did these experiences both in Ukraine and the Republic of Georgia. Is this sort of a career path that you're pursuing? Where are you going to go with all of this?
Well, yeah. So I've been interested in it for a while. We talked earlier before we started this video, and freshman year of college, a friend of a friend mentioned he knew a guy who did an embassy internship. And ever since then, I've been fascinated with doing one. And luckily, I've been able to do 2 so far. And I think it's definitely kept me interested in the field of international relations and Eurasia. But I still want to see, because it's about a 2-year process to become a foreign service officer. You've got to take multiple exams, get another security clearance, and then wait a while for them to station you somewhere. Okay. So in that case, I definitely want to take the test and get the ball rolling once I graduate here this, spring. But see where exactly my master's studies and things in the future take me, because it could be a 2-year time after I take that test.
Okay.
Before anything happens. So we'll definitely see.
All right. Very interesting. It's just interesting as a career path for sure, for anybody who wants to incorporate a global element into their job. I'm sure there's never a dull moment.
No, never.
Can you give us a sense of some of the different jobs in the embassy? Like you were an intern, but what are other people who work there doing?
That is a wonderful question. So I just got done talking with a local representative of the State Department here in Chicago, and he boiled it down, because this is something I also realized my first week at each embassy, the wide array of jobs people can have in embassies and also the State Department in general. So there's multiple cones. The ones that I'm aware of are the political and economic cone. So those are, political officers, economic officers that kind of study those relationships the U.S. has with the country they're in. And then there's management officers. So they kind of run the logistics of the embassy, how things should be run. There's general services and like security. So general services also kind of handles logistics, and regional security also offers the protection of the embassy to make sure things are okay and safe. There might be another one. One of those might be fused, but that's the general idea. Okay. The U.S. State Department also really likes specialists. So if you're really into STEM or if you're really into IT, you're definitely wanted in the State Department, because those guys saved my day more than a few times when my computer crashed or there were internet troubles or anything like that. So that's one job for sure. There's also other jobs that are kind of, contractual. And a lot of embassies also are attached to the USAID, which runs our aid and development to different countries offices. And if you talk to them, there's so many different characters that work there as well. So multiple possibilities, no matter what you're into.
You talked really briefly about America House too. What is that?
So that was kind of unique to Kiev.
Okay.
A lot of embassies, I know when I was interested in a program in France, for example, have American corners in their consulates and in their embassies where Americans can talk about either their work in the embassy, their lives back in the US, or anything like that. But in Kiev, we had a whole building that they had programmed for doing these types of events. So whenever there was a holiday like 4th of July, Memorial Day or anything like that, the embassy would put on an event. So people could come in, and for these events that I went to, for example, for Thanksgiving and Halloween, there'd be 300 people that would come in and they'd listen to all these different, speakers, and they'd also do all these types of activities. So those are the primary focuses, and the day-to-day focuses of those American corners and America houses are also to help people with English or to help them learn a little bit about American culture and America's people.
All right. Great. We have a bunch of sort of later elementary school students who are watching you, probably fans of yours, some of them from your virtual exchange earlier this year. But the question has arisen, if I were a fourth or fifth grader who is learning about the world and wanted to incorporate some element of travel and adventure into my career, how could I sort of get on a path where they or I could do what you did?
Well, my path has been a little bit wonky. I will say that for sure. One thing I have noticed in anyone else who's done these types of programs or worked in the foreign services, any path can really get you there. And I know that's a very vague answer, but just whatever you're really passionate about, pursue it 100% and take every opportunity, especially if it's for, global studying, studying abroad, for example, interning abroad with not only the State Department, but other places. I interned with Congress and an NGO in West Africa before I got considered finally for an internship in Kiev. So I think those really helped me. And I think if you're into languages and politics like I was when I was a weirdo sixth grader, liking those things, and then again in high school and college, definitely look into anything you can do in those fields right now. So interning, studying, all that will help you.
I'm really glad you brought up languages. I feel like, especially in your case, I was going to ask, how long have you been studying? Did you know any Russian or Ukrainian before you got this opportunity?
Yeah, so I came to college initially interested in just languages, but my mom was a little apprehensive and she was like, well, you also like politics, so maybe study political science too. And I did, and I liked it, but French and Russian have always been very close to my heart. Mm-hmm. And so I did 4 months in St. Petersburg, Russia, in the American Institute for Foreign Studies program there. And I had also taken 2 years of Russian before, and about 6 years of French before that too. So languages have been a big part of this. And I think they always help too. I think when anyone looks at a resume or a school application, if you're looking into colleges, having a little bit of language goes a long way. And it's also fun because if you get to a place that actually speaks it day to day, it makes it such a more interesting experience.
Great. So having some background in a language would really sort of help your application, so to speak, for an internship, because you already have that baseline of communication with the local culture where you might be working.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. So you're going to take your exam. You're going to sort of see what happens with the Foreign Service Officer route. What will be your next adventure after we're all sort of released from quarantine? Is there any place in the world you'd like to explore?
Yeah. So, once we can all go back outside again and start, talking to each other and doing all that, my next stop is hopefully at University of Sciences Po and University of Moscow. So I'll be doing a a dual master's program there. So 1 year in Paris and 1 year in Moscow. And then I'll be all done. But first I got to finish my undergrad. So that's what I'm focused on right now.
Couple more months to go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, that combination of continuing to jump on opportunities to see other places and live in other countries, I'm sure will only help your career in whichever direction it takes.
I hope so.
Yeah, great. Well, I think we got to most of our questions. If you have any other questions for Quinn, please feel free to reach out to Reach the World. You can leave some comments in the video chat bar after the video posts, and we'll be happy to sort of loop back around with answers to the extent that we can. I just want to thank you so much, Quinn, for joining us today and telling us about what it's like to work in a U.S. embassy. Thanks to our entire YouTube live stream audience for joining us today too. You can join us again on Friday, as soon as Friday, at the same time, same place, when we're going to be talking with Fulbright scholar Katja Zinn, and she's going to tell us about the loneliest words in the world, those words that only exist in one language. So you can find a complete list of upcoming Reach the World live stream events at home.reachtheworld.org, and we'll see you next time for Show and Tell. Thanks, Quinn.
Thank you.